Welcome back to the Grab Your Gear podcast, where we speak to people who get up and work hard and make things happen every single day. So if that's you, make sure you subscribe to the channel here. We go live every Wednesday with yours truly, Joe Staten, and also our co-host, Jack Windsor, joining us now. Host of the Windsor Report 98.9 and editor-in-chief at the Ohio Press Network, which, Jack, we've been working with you a lot at the network, and we're excited on some things we're developing there. Just expanding our content and bringing you guys a lot of informative news that you want to stay posted on. So be sure to follow the Ohio Press Network at Ohio Press on X. And first of all, before we get to this crazy breaking news, which is what I'll label it, Jack, how is your week going? It's been again, every week is crazy with news right now with the president.
Yeah. Every week, we're going to talk about that flooding the zone in just a moment and how important that has been to Trump's second administration. But it's been a great week. Today, I am excited to announce that I didn't know that it was going to be in lockstep with what President Trump is doing. President Trump today will sign an executive order that outlaws men in women's sports. And episode 1 of Face to Face, which is our long form podcast, will also release today. And that episode is with Riley Gaines. So we're excited to release that. And the week started out super fantastic, and I'm glad that you asked. I was able to make a trip to East Palestine, Ohio, with some of the team members here, and able to listen to Vice President Vance talk about what he and President Trump will do to make sure that cleanup efforts continue there in East Palestine. And I was humbled and honored when he was finished with his remarks, and without skipping a beat, he looked right at me and said, "Jack, do you have a question?" And I don't get nervous for these things, and I usually don't get caught off guard, but I was caught off guard by that. I didn't think that he was going to come to me for the first question. So that's how my week started, and it has been crazy busy ever since. And I don't see that relenting anytime soon.
Yeah, pretty humbling to hear the second most powerful person in the world calling you first for a question that you might have had in mind, but maybe it all changed when that moment hit you. So yeah, but we're bringing you guys that content too. So if you don't want to miss out on the vice president's questions, follow Jack on Twitter at Jack Windsor. And I try to bring you guys some things myself as well. So at Real Joe Staten on Twitter for myself. But Jack, the first story, and this just happened when we were prepping for the show. I saw 20
Yeah.
minutes ago Eric Daugherty on Twitter tweeting Congressman Al Green bringing articles of impeachment against the president, Donald Trump. And I mean, where do we even start with this? It's over the ethnic cleansing in Gaza that the president announced that the United States is going to try to basically go and occupy and take over the territory in Gaza and rebuild it, which,
Mhm.
to be honest, I don't know how I feel about that quite yet and how it's all going to turn out. I think we're going to have to wait and see on that. But we are 2 weeks into the man's presidency and we have articles of impeachment. To me, this is just another indicator of the intolerance of the left. You guys can't wait 3 weeks before impeaching the president. What are your thoughts, Jack?
I have so many thoughts. I don't know if I will be able to put them in succinct order. The first thought I have is it's pretty rich, right? This is the group of people who talked about protecting our democracy, yet they put a woman forward to run for president who didn't get one primary vote in the Democrat primary process. And now, instead of doing what statesmen and stateswomen should be doing, having robust debates about public policy, they're going to throw a wrench into the gears again. And instead of trying to sway public perception and opinion on policy, they're going to go orange man bad, orange man bad. I mean, we've seen this movie before. And I can't help but repeat what I've probably said 100 times and will say 1,000 times more, that when your policy positions suck, all you have is to attempt to character assassinate your opponent. And here we are again. But I think part of it comes from Joe orders, legislative priorities, and just this internal restructuring of government as we know it on the federal level has been so fast, so wide, and so deep on so many levels that the left has really had a hard time dealing with all of these things. And in fact, I think the press is struggling because the zone is flooded with what do we focus on? What do we focus on? So now this gives them a rallying cry. Orange man bad. He needs to be out of office. And it'll be interesting to see how the public responds this time. I don't always gauge it by guys like you and me. And I don't mean that to sound Like we're putting ourselves on a pedestal. We just are in the weeds on this stuff every day. A lot of people who listen to us and watch us, they're busy working and providing for their families, which is awesome. You and I are going to react a certain way. I'm really curious to see how everybody else reacts to this news.
Yeah, this announcement has been it's coupled with the reality of a Donald Trump who has a 56 to 58% approval rating, which did not happen the first time around. And I think the American public is not as susceptible to some of these lines of attack by the mainstream media. In fact, as we've seen with the White House press briefing room, new media being invited into those briefings is just another reality, another example of the fact that people don't trust the legacy media outlets. So whatever they try to twist and put on this, I think they've even been hesitant to attack the president as vehemently as they did the first time around. CNN getting rid of Jim Acosta as one example of that. Um, but the next thing I want to go into, Jack, in relation to this is, and Isabella, shout out our producer Isabella, always does a great job. But if you could pull up that video of the Elon Musk clip, and we'll get into that.
We will see you in the courts, in Congress, in the streets. Elon Musk is a Nazi Nepo baby. A godless, lawless billionaire who no one elected. Elon, this is the American people. This is not your trashy Cybertruck that you can just dismantle, pick apart, and sell the pieces of.
So, a Nazi nepo baby, a godless, lawless billionaire. Is that how you think of Elon, Jack?
No, I think of him as probably one of the most brilliant minds of our time who has created businesses and products that other people couldn't imagine, or if they could imagine them, they didn't have the wherewithal to pull together the support to bring them to fruition. Again, this is. Uh, I sound like a broken record. I get tired of hearing myself say this. The left consistently points at their political ideological opponents and accuses them of the things that they're doing. So when she talks about heartless, godless billionaires, I just wonder, is she talking about George Soros, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg? No, she's talking about Elon Musk. And Elon Musk was all the rage 10 years ago, right? When Tesla came out, he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Who does that sound like? Sounds like Donald Trump, who was a friend of the Democrats, who the left loved. Everybody wanted him on their TV show. They thought he should be the next president until he put an R by his name, until he decided that he was going to root out all the corruption in Washington, D.C., and help Americans see where all their tax dollars were really going. We've seen this movie before. Again, I am just super curious how this will play out. But I don't know about you. I'm just sick and tired of every time the left disagrees with something, they're going to put the label of Nazi or Hitler or homophobe or xenophobe or racist or misogynist on you and hope that it drums up enough energy and emotion from people who aren't paying attention that maybe it pauses the movement. But I'm dead dog tired of it, man.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I'm with you. And something I saw in on the story was Chuck Schumer. He tweeted out just a hilarious, ironic tweet. I don't know how the intern got this one out without being screened, but he said an unelected shadow government is conducting a hostile takeover of the federal government, and Alex Soros liked that tweet. And I just thought, is there anything more ironic than Alex Soros liking a tweet about a shadow government with Elon Musk, bringing in, and I saw an article from Ohio Press on this yesterday, basically bringing in six autistic tech bros, who knows, to cut
Yeah.
trillions of dollars from the federal budget. And this is the guy we're attacking. This is the Nazi Nepo baby because we want to wait. What are we want to what? We want to cut money from the budget? Is that the worst thing he's doing? He's cutting money from the federal budget to prevent us driving off a financial cliff. Like, make it make sense. Is this not what we should be doing at the federal level? This is what we've been waiting for years and years for. Like, does that make any sense to you, Jack? What is the goal here from the Democrats?
Kabuki theater, as one of our dear friends would say, it's kabuki theater. It's political gamesmanship. We're sitting on $36 trillion of debt. which means that we need to cut this shit out now. And now that the cavalry has arrived over the hill, the folks who are benefiting from the shell game of tax dollars going to every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the world, it's about to stop. And you go, well, what are you talking about? You claim that. I'm talking about $1.5 million in DEI funds to Serbia. I'm talking about $20,000 for the production of a DEI musical in Ireland. Do you think these things really go off? Or do you think money gets earmarked, allocated, and sent out? And somebody like Sarah Biden, Joe Biden, James Biden, Hunter Biden, Mitt Romney and Mitt's family, somebody ends up receiving payment for services that they've provided somebody in some foreign government. This bullshit needs to stop. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and USAID is just the tip of the iceberg, I think. But last night, all staff were placed on administrative leave. And just a couple quick examples. You mentioned one, the 1.5 million, but $20 million for a Sesame Street show in Iraq, $70,000 for a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a trans opera in Colombia. I mean, you can go down the list of all these multi-million dollar expenses at the cost of taxpayers. This isn't like a leftist PAC. This isn't a leftist donor organization. These are American tax dollars. These are
Your money,
hard-earned
my money.
dollars that we work for and we pay, and we're paying for these just ridiculous expenses. So I think what Elon Musk is doing, and this is the point that I wanted to bring up today, partially before we get into RFK, Jack, was Elon Musk he's not only becoming the next Donald Trump in the eyes of the left, I think he already is on the streets, calling him a Nazi, calling for fighting in the streets, calling for basically for an uprising against Elon Musk. That man
Mhm.
needs Secret Service protection now. I know he has private security, but they are labeling him that as they labeled Donald Trump. And I think Trump kind of surpassed all of that criticism, and everybody saw it for what it was. And I think Elon, to a certain degree, will be protected as well. But yeah, he's becoming the scapegoat, the new scapegoat. So, and it's kind of similar. Reminds me of, in some ways, of Bobby Kennedy when he changed teams, and that's what we're going to get into now, Jack. And I know you had some thoughts on this, but kind of in the middle of the nomination process, and I just saw something as well that really bothered me, which was Bernie Sanders coming out against RFK and making his decision. And it's just one example, but somebody who claims to be open minded, but yet he's raking in $1.6 million from pharmaceutical companies. You know, there's no consistency. That's the problem. It's all partisan. We're not going to vote for somebody who's actually good for Americans' health. And so I
Mhm.
want to throw it to you, Jack. What are you seeing right now in this nomination process? And do you agree with that assessment?
I do agree with that assessment, and I've really been kicking a dead horse here all morning, and I'll give one more kick here. The only consistent thing that you'll see from the Sanders of the world, the Liz Warrens of the world, is that they are consistently inconsistent. And the one thing that they will always try to do is pull every lever and what about ism every situation to make their position look like a rational, reasonable position. I had to give up a long time ago trying to reason and argue with people who are left of center or extremely left of center because you and I, Joe, and the people who are watching this, we have a compass, we have a foundation, we have a certain set of core beliefs that drive our behavior. There is right, there is wrong, there is good, there is bad, there is a time for everything. These folks, it's anarchy, it's chaos. The right thing is advancing their agenda at all costs. And that's where we're at. So I'm excited about, though, Robert F. Kennedy, and I'm excited about him for a couple of reasons. One, anytime somebody gets into a new position and all hell breaks loose, it's either one of two things. Either the person is the wrong person or the person is the right person. And when they're the right person, the people who are there benefiting and don't want their cheese moved, to use the old book analogy, uh, they raise hell, and that's kind of where we are with RFK. He's not afraid to come against the addictive food industry. He's not afraid to stand against big pharma, and he's not afraid to talk about things that are really common sense to everybody outside the DC Beltway, which is You get some exercise, you get some rest, you get some sunshine, you pay attention to the food that you put into your body, and all of a sudden, the chronic health issues that we say are catastrophic will probably start to get better. That's just common sense. And so when you look at the pushback that he's received, you got to ask yourself why. Because the supply and demand of the chaos always leads back to the money. But the good news is he was voted out of committee 14-13 yesterday, and with Republicans having an overall 53-47 Senate majority. And J.D. Vance having the opportunity to cast the tie-breaking vote as he did with Pete Hegseth. It looks to me like, all things being equal, Robert F. Kennedy will be our next Secretary of Health and Human Services. And I can tell you, there are a lot of moms who have never voted Republican before, who have never engaged in the political process before, who are just flat out happy about that.
Yeah, I think that's where we tie this podcast into how this is going to affect the listeners that listen to our podcast and the people who work hard every day. Is when you take your child to the doctor's office, Bobby Kennedy has a fundamentally different view of healthcare and what the doctor should be doing, in terms of intervention based care versus, outcome based. We want to actually cure chronic disease. We want to cure the precursors to things like cancer and diabetes and heart disease, and not just reward doctors' offices for prescribing medication and hitting a quota. That's how it currently is. And there's so many
Yep.
different incentives for Congress people to take from these healthcare companies and from pharma that, of course, they're not going to vote for Bobby Kennedy. And in my opinion, Jack, there's so much social pressure on these Congress people right now because of Donald Trump's popularity and how he owns the Republican Party, that I think a lot of these traditional Republicans, if it were not Donald Trump, let's say if George W. Bush nominated RFK in some strange world, he wouldn't make it out of the Senate. And there's no way, because the public would not hold them accountable. Donald Trump has the weight to hold them accountable. If somebody steps out of line besides someone like a Mitch McConnell, there's going to be significant public blowback against that move. And so I think based on that alone, I have faith that he will make it out of the Senate and that we will see fundamental change to our healthcare in the United States, which is a huge impact for our listeners. And that's something that you
Yeah.
guys should stay posted on. We will keep you updated on that on Twitter, at the Ohio Press Network, at Grab Your Gear here as well. And just to wrap up today's show, Jack, I know I mentioned it earlier. It's actually significant news. I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts on the news yesterday with Gaza, with the president hosting the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and announcing essentially that we're going to occupy Gaza and help relocate 1.7 million people in Gaza, which the left is painting as ethnic cleansing. I don't know if that's fair. I think it's a little bit too far. Obviously, it will be conducted in a humane way, but just what are your thoughts on that situation? How do you see that going? I know it's early, but what do you think?
Yeah. So the first bellwether for me, Congressman Warren Davidson from Ohio, who I have the opportunity to interview quite a bit on my radio show, he posted on X after the announcement and said something like, is this America first? And I thought, okay, I can understand how people who are America first, ultra America first, would look at this and go, we have our own problems here. What are we doing intervening at this level in Gaza? And so uh, I'll have uh, a poll up on X at Jack Windsor today. You can vote, you can give feedback. But what I will be curious to see, we have to remember several things. Number one, particularly on the right. There are people who 100% believe that when you bless Israel, you will be blessed. And so, making sure that we are partnered with Israel to help them eradicate, undetonated bombs from an area, that makes sense. But when you start using language like we are going to occupy, we are going to move people out, and we are going to, clear the land and build things, I think that's an entirely different level. Now, will that happen? I don't know, but I can tell you that the mouth that it came from is the same guy who just, 72 hours ago talked about slapping tariffs on three significant, what you would call economic partners globally. And within 48 hours, those people moved. And so it will be curious for me to watch what happens now that he's made that comment. Now, the left has already reacted and they want to impeach him. What's going to happen in Gaza? What's going to happen on the international stage from other countries who maybe have not stepped up and financially done the things that they've needed to do in that region? Will it evoke some financial response from other countries? Will it open up the dialogue and public debate on what we need to do here in this country? That's what I think will happen. But, to be seen, I guess.
Yeah, I think we do need to stay as objective as possible, and just this could go either way, right? I can see both sides of people who don't think this is America first, but at the same time, I did see something. I saw somebody comment on this and say that Israel has at some level stated their desire to go into Gaza and perform a similar operation, and so if the United States went in, it could almost position itself as a barrier between Israel in that war against Hamas and the and the surrogates who are involved in that war. I think we could have a hand in peace over there through this strategy, but it just off the top doesn't necessarily sound like that could be the case. So something to stay posted on for our listeners for sure. But I think that's about all for today's show. Again, appreciate you joining today, Jack, and just working with us. And for all our listeners, be sure to follow Jack at Jack Windsor on Twitter. I should say on X these days, at Ohio Press, editor-in-chief over there. So follow the Ohio Press Network and subscribe here to grab your gear for all of your content needs if you're a hard-working individual. We go live every Wednesday here on the podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and we will see you next time. Take care.